Hello and welcome to another video on Victoria 3. Now, on Thursday I released a video all about the diplomatic plays, the 21st dev diary for Victoria 3, and because I got access to the dev diary early, there of course wasn't any feedback, there was no comments to go through, no developer responses, and as such we're going to be doing this video now to have a look at the community feedback and the dev responses to that feedback. Hey, I'm doubling up, getting 2 videos out of a single dev diary. It's all good stuff. Anyway, without further ado, let's have a look at what the community had to say about this dev diary. And first of all, I think we should have a look at this, and that is the response, right? There has been some very good responses to previous dev diaries, but I don't think I recall one being quite as one-sided as this. The community have very much responded positively to the diplomatic plays. Only 6 people not liking it, compared to, I don't know, do the math, like 400 or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, the community's response has been very, very positive, and yeah, my own response was positive as well. Let's see what else though we have to see in this dev diary. So, community responses. Will it be possible to add demands once a war has broke out? It should of course add to the risk of more nations joining the enemy side. So no. The fact that diplomatic play sets the hard boundaries of the possible space by in the resulting war is a critical feature of the system. The assumption is that every participant has already made all their possible claims ahead of time to permit all the players to make calculated decision on how critical this war is to them. I believe it's possible to add war goals via scripted effects though, so special events and the like could potentially introduce this where appropriate. The thing I would say there is that should not be the case for Great Wars. When World War I, which is in this game's time frame, when World War I broke out, I don't believe any of the sides on, the Allied powers, the Entente, I don't believe any of them had dismantle Austria-Hungary as a war goal. That was added partway through. Like that's just like the clearest example that I can give of that, right? No one wanted to completely dismantle Austria-Hungary when the war broke out. So that is, in Victoria 3 terms, a war goal that was added after the outbreak of war. And in addition to that, parties that maybe come into the war late, right? That should hopefully be a possibility as well. And then in that case, what do they get? Right? If I am playing as Great Britain and there's a war breaking out in Europe, say France versus Germany, whatever, right? And I, as Great Britain, I'm trying to. I've taken over control, taking the lead in the war, and we got the naval shit down. It's perfectly fine, right? But France is losing on land, so I'm trying to get Russia involved, right? I'm trying to get Austria-Hungary involved. Is there any way for me to, after the war has broken out, continue my efforts to bring Austria-Hungary to the table? I kind of wish there was, having it be impossible to add any new claims or any new participants after war has broken out is, I don't know, a little bit, I kind of want to say ahistorical, to be honest. But on the other hand, it does, yeah, like they say here, it permits the players to make calculated decisions because they know everything that is involved, right? It makes the AI very capable of making, decent decisions and not completely crap in the bed, because they will know ahead of time the powers of each side and how likely they are to win the war, not having to bring into account, but my enemy may bring in huge big boyo number 3, halfway through the war. So I that's kind of where I'm leaning on that. Yeah, I think that's where I'm leaning on that. But anyway, let's move on to the next comment. This is great. Just a couple of questions. What exactly is cut down to size? How will a diplomatic play be for the player if they're not the initiator nor the target? Will we be able to choose whichever side we want if it even if it means England siding with France, or will be locked into fewer options? And are pops in any way connected to diplomatic plays? That is, will pops demand that you take a specific side in a certain diplomatic play? So, I mean, cut down to size is what we have in Victoria 2, right? The method by which you cut a big power down to size, you split it up into smaller chunks, you take away its colonies, that kind of thing. But anyway, we'll have a look at the comment first before I make my comments. Cut down to size is a war goal usable on very infamous countries, which forces them to relinquish every single state, subjects included, that they did not possess 20 years before the war goal was demanded. Essentially, it completely strips a country of all recent conquests. The player participates in a diplomatic play under the exact same rules as AI. You can join a side if there isn't something mechanical like an alliance blocking you from doing so. Okay. I was actually unaware of the 20-year rule. I think that is the case in Vicky 2, right? I am not 100% on that one. But if so or if not, whatever. This seems fine, right? You know, cut down to size, taking away all of your recent conquests, all of the recent gains, set you back. Makes sense, and it doesn't completely ruin a country, it just is a setback. Although, considering the game lasts 100 years, it's like a fifth of the game. So, you've probably got some conquests in the past 20 years, or a lot of conquests in the past 20 years, considering like you've managed to get up to the point where you have that much infamy. So yeah, it's pretty painful, it's pretty devastating, but not game ruining, I don't think. Not sure. Anyway, so yeah, and the player participating in exactly the same way as the AI, but also the unanswered questions: are pops in any way connected to diplomatic plays? That would be really interesting. I would say less about pops demanding you be on a specific side and more interest groups. If interest groups had if there was a debate within your country between interest groups on which side of a conflict to join, that would be pretty cool. I just don't think the time scale is there for it. Because when one of these diplomatic plays jumps up that you might want to join in, I don't think you'll have enough time to be like juggling between your interest groups and seeing which one to be. I suppose you could always have it so that they instantly have an opinion, plus or a minus or whatever, and then you'd be able to choose based on that. It'd be interesting to see, actually. It'd be interesting to see. I kind of like the idea, the more I think about it. But anyway, moving on. If I say I am the Hudson Bay Company, a subject of Britain, can I start a diplomatic play to say take the American West border, or perhaps request Britain to do so, or perhaps join in on, say, a British-American diplomatic play over Oregon? So, starting and joining plays is possible. There's currently no way to ask an AI overlord to grab something for you. So, something that we kind of maybe got a little bit hinted about in the dev diary was that the overlords of the aggressors and the target will both be notified when a diplomatic play starts. So depending on the level of subject that you are and how limited your diplomacy is going to be, subjects will be allowed to declare their own wars, and the overlords will be notified of this because they, of course, have an interest in the region where their colonial subject is. So I would say that this is probably totally possible, right? If you're the Hudson Bay Company and say that kind of subject has the ability to declare its own wars, you could do that, and then Britain would be called in, or they would be notified, and they'd be able to join that diplomatic play based on their overlordship of you. I imagine that's probably going to be possible. No way to ask the AI overlord to grab something for you, sure, but if you were to be able to entice your overlord to help you, that may be the way to do it. Anyway, moving on. Can I promise something from myself to sway another country besides an obligation? Like, as Kokand, offer to join the Russian market to gain protection against Qing, or something of that nature. So, not in the current build of the game, but it's something we're definitely hoping to add. And then from the dev diary, there's a few more such types of promises. Plan for release, like becoming a protectorate or giving a piece of land, but they're not yet implemented. Yeah, I mean, it was in the dev diary. Gaining protection by trading away your independence is exactly the kind of move we're hoping to encourage with this. Yeah, I mean, promising to become a protectorate is exactly there. Joining the market though, that's an interesting one as well, because it's different from a protectorate. It's just joining the market, but at the same time, Russia would have to pay more influence points or influence capacity, sorry, to have Kokand in there. So they'd have to weigh up the pros and cons of having Kokand in their sphere of custom unionage. But yeah, I think having more ways to offer people things would be great. Like, tell you what, you pay me war reparations and I will join your side. That could be cool. War reparations are usually, a hostile thing, but it's like, yeah, if you pay me a portion of this for 10 years after the war, then totally I'll join. But that could be really cool. More options, more things, please. Is it possible for both the target and the instigator to back down simultaneously and maintain the status quo? Yeah, no, this is something that I brought up. I kind of want a white piece option. But very very encouragingly, at the moment, no, but I'm considering adding more status quo related actions to diplomatic plays, such as this one, or swaying a country to your side by vowing not to press any war goals for yourself. Yeah, after we finished going through these dev responses, there's also some posts from Reddit that I want to bring up, and there's some here that I will be showing that very much talk about this kind of white piece ability and why we should have it. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm still very much on the side of the fence of wanting a white piece option. This sounds very promising. I have one question though. Will you as a player be able to select demands when you get swayed by the instigator or defender? For example, when you play as Prussia and Russia instigates a play against Austria and tries to sway you. In that case, you've shown that there is a weight map associated with certain territorial claims, I assume from Russia's perspective as the player. This is very nice, but if you're not Russia but Prussia in that place, you might not want the same state priority as the AI would have chosen, be it for strategic, visual, or economic purposes. Yeah, being able to select demands when you are the one being brought out. The wording of this is awkward, to say the least. Excuse me. But, yeah. If you are the player and you're like, well, the AI is offering me this piece of the enemy's land, but I kind of want this piece instead, the ability to choose there would be really nice. Reverse swaying, saying I will join you for X, currently isn't in, but I'm hoping to have time to add it before release. That's encouraging. I hope that comes in. You know what could actually be really, really good that is kind of useless in other games? The province of interest in EU4, where you can highlight various provinces that you have an interest in, and then the AI is more likely to give you those ones in a peace deal. That could be really interesting. I kind of think that could work, because then you'd be able to select which territories or states you have an interest in, and then the AI, if they're trying to sway you, would offer you those ones rather than what it weights as the most valuable for you. Do solved diplomatic plays cause a truce and prevent any play at that time? So yes, backing down causes a truce. Current truces are hard blocks, but I'm considering changing them to be breakable at a hefty infamy and diplomacy penalty. Yeah, in Victoria 2, truces are hard locks. You can't even make claims while you have a truce. Although if you have the ability to insta-deck, basically if you have a core on the on the party that you have a truce with, or I think cut down to size also lets you truce break there. Then you're able to do that. You can't call in any allies that are also truced with them though. But yeah, changing them to breakable at a hefty infamy and diplomacy penalty, I can see that working. I think one of the main reasons that a world conquest in Vicky 2 is quite so much harder is this truce blocking everything that you want to do system. So I imagine if they change it to breakable, that just means the game is going to then be breakable and people be able to do world conquest and such. I think that's if world conquest ends up being a thing, this is what will cause it, I think. Moving on. How easy will weak AI back down for small demands? If a great power demands only a treaty port and target does not get much support, will they back down? The aim is that the AI should generally back down if the demand isn't nation-ending and they don't think they can win the war. So like Britain getting a treaty port from China at the start of the game, that's probably going to be a back down-ism. I mean, maybe China thinks they can win the war because they've got more troops by a lot. So maybe not, but we'll see. We'll see. That's it's an interesting one there. I wonder what happens if you declare a cut down to size war goal in, say, 1846. Does it only take away gains from 1836 onwards, or does it include gains from 1826 onwards? It doesn't include anything gained before the game starts. Ah, that's a shame. That would be pretty. That would be pretty fun, actually. I kind of. You basically have to code borders for every month or every year from 1816 to 1836 if you wanted this to be the case. It would be cool, but it's very edge case and very few people are ever going to see anything of the sort. But it would be cool. But I totally understand not having it in. The diplomatic play for Cape Colony becoming independent says that it's a diplomatic play in England. That presumes because England is the strategic region that the UK's capital is in. But wouldn't it make more sense for an independence demand to be centered on the capital of the subject, not the overlord, in this case, the Cape? It makes more sense, to me at least, for countries with an interest in Cape, i.e. other colonial powers, to have an interest in joining rather than continental neighbours. For example, Canada, or predecessors thereof, demanding independence should probably be primarily involving the USA, whereas this seems like it'd just be France that'd be interested. So, independence diplomatic plays targeting the overlord's capital is not intended. It's a work in progress. Okay, so it's like a big long comment about I don't think this thing should be it, and there's like, yeah, nah, you're right. Working on it. Fair enough. In Victoria 2, there was a Liberate Country CB that you could use, for example, to go to war against the UK to force them to liberate Ireland, making the newly formed nation appear on the map. Is there a diplomatic play permitting the same thing? And if there is one, would the country be fully independent, or is it more of a, well, when I said I was liberating you, what I really meant is that you're now my puppet? There isn't currently, but it exists as a war goal. It's planned to be implemented as a play before release. It's slightly tricky to set up UX-wise, which is why it isn't done yet. Fair enough. I think there should be a thing. Yeah, now working on it. I think this shouldn't be a thing. Yeah, now we're working on it. You know, they're working on the game. Still. For the Cape Colony example then, does this mean Britain would annex one of the colonies as a main demand? Will the main demand be more apparent in the final UI? Yes and yes. For those wondering what that is about, let me just highlight that so we can find it again. That is... there, this one. So he's taking, he's taking all of this if they don't back down and it goes to war. Although if he backs down, he'll probably just take Eastern Cape, I think, because it's at the top. Is what I'm expecting there, at least. So, and yeah, will the main demand be more apparent in the final UI? Maybe highlight it with brighter gold or something. Does that mean that diplomatically annexing your subject will always lead to war, as annexation or annexing is nation ending? So, not if the subject is an AI country. It's possible for AI countries to actually act rationally in this situation and allow themselves to be annexed if it's obvious the loss of life will be too great. If the target is a human player in multiplayer, though, backing down from a play like that would mean game over, so they're liable to fight to the death just to spite you. But launching a play that lopsided in multiplayer is kind of bad form anyway. Playing as a subject in a multiplayer is kind of bad form too. Because generally people don't play as subjects. Like I'm imagining, you know, a big Victoria 3 multiplayer. I doubt anyone's going to be playing as the East India Company. But if you do, then you're kind of screwing over Britain, because your ultimate goal would be, obviously, to become free. So you're kind of just screwing over another country for the lulz. So yeah, if you get annexed, I mean, you're the one being in bad form by being there in the first place. Anyway, moving on. Although I'm very, very excited for Victoria 3 multiplayer, just gotta say. You say that subjects can do plays of their own. Will dumb subject AI... What evidence other than history is there for the AI being dumb? Huh? Mr. Ksmiles? Will dumb subject AI be able to drag me into plays without my input? Can AI Canada say, oh, Britain is powerful and is going to have my back, I'm going to start a play on the US, without a player Britain having any input? So, it depends on the type of subject they are. More independent types of subjects, like dominions or protectorates, can start plays of their own, though of course their overlord is not obliged to jump to their aid in these at all. If you want to ensure your subjects don't make any moves on their own, to endanger them, then you need to turn them into less independent types, like territories or puppets. Basically exactly what I was saying up above, about that Hudson Bay Company thing going on. Is he going somewhere? Just as a complete aside, very non sequitur to this dev diary, sometimes to annoy me, my wife, when she's saying thanks, will say cheerio instead of cheers. For people not from Britain, cheers is like thank you, and cheerio is goodbye. So she says goodbye when she means thank you. It's very irritating. So he's leaving. Can multiple diplomatic plays commence simultaneously during a game, either between a nation already in a diplomatic play, instigating one and targeting another, for example, or between two nations completely uninvolved in the first diplomatic play event? Yes, absolutely. Occasionally, though rarely, this will create a contradiction, since you and another country pledging positions in two different plays freely could potentially make you both a co-belligerent and enemy of the other country at once. This is not allowed for quite obvious reasons, so in this case your position in the second play would become invalid once the first play escalates into war. I wish I was more versed in the history of the era, because I'm certain that at some point somebody would have been like an ally and an enemy at the same time, right? That's got to have happened. If you know of anything like that, feel free to, write in the comments, because I'm super interested. I think maybe there is. There's gotta be. There's gotta be. Anyway, moving on. Where's the status quo demand? Status quo is basically when the target demands nothing but war reparations and the initiator backs down. Being conservative with your counter demands like that is a good way to attract support of secondary countries in the play, and thereby increase the chance the initiator backs down. It's also possible for resulting war to have a white peace outcome. Yes, it is something I mentioned in the Dev Diary video itself. It's like, there's probably going to be a way to go to white peace once it's joined, once it's become war, but I don't think it should have to lead to war for there to be a white peace. There needs to be, or I feel there needs to be a status quo white peace before the play leads to war. Is there any reason to not to use your first diplomatic play to, say, annex a country and then use your maneuvers to influence other nations to your side, instead of just expanding your goal during a play? Example, I, as the Ottomans, would like to use the annex play on Egypt, then once the play is started, use my maneuvers to influence the British, Austrians, and Prussia. So all demands, including the initial one the play is based on, creates incidents of relative proportion, which will make secondary countries more prone to align against you. Whether you want to come out strong with your initial demand and then try to sway countries to your side, or be more cautious initially and see how far you can push it without upsetting too many people, is up to you. There are valid strategic reasons for both approaches. And this is again something that I'm really happy about. Like, declaring war, well, you have to do it through diplomatic plays, but it's going to require so much more thought than you click the declare war button on the diplomacy menu thing, right? You click that button, and then you look at the little checkboxes down beneath that show your allies and your enemy's allies. And your allies have got, you know, green tick, red X, green tick. Nice, I know that those 3 will join me and that 1 will not. It's not very in-depth now, is it? It's not super deep. These diplomatic plays and the political maneuvering behind warfare is fucking awesome. Like, it's so much more in-depth. It's so much... It's funny because what it's doing is making warfare political. It's making warfare diplomacy. And that's something that seems obvious when you think of what these concepts actually are. Like, what is war? War is when 2 countries do like fight each other. 2 countries doing anything together is diplomacy. And the countries are being, run via politics. Warfare is inherently political and diplomatic. It's like anti-diplomatic. You know what I mean, though, right? It's no other game that Paradox makes that I'm aware of has warfare so political and so diplomatic. And I'm so here for it. I'm so here for it. There's a damn good reason that this dev diary was so well liked, because diplomatic plays seem freaking amazing. Anyway, moving on. Oh, actually, no, we've got this to read still. One thing to consider, though, is that the primary demand will be the one conceded if the target backs down and must also be included in any peace deal you're offering, other than complete capitulation, of course. So starting a play for something fairly mild makes it moderately easier to get out of war later on, but also yield less payoff if they give it to you without a fight. Yeah, so it's like, do I go hard or soft with my initial demands? Who the hell knows? I don't know what... It's probably going to be a case of... Excuse me. Different plays, different wars are going to require different strategies going in. And making the entire... Should I go to war or we are going to go to war take strategy instead of just click button, click the box next to the tick next to France... and then click the declare war button. Like, it's so much deeper. It's so much deeper, and I'm so here for it. Some more questions here. As somewhat related question, will the amount of reparations paid by nations stay the same no matter who demands them? 2 situations to better explain the question. 1, you're a small country threatened by one of the big guys, but I get support of the other big guys while demanding only reparations. 2, I'm a big country in a play against the same country X. Will the amount of reparations stay the same in both cases? Because what would seem an enormous amount of money for a small nation would be a tiny percentage of a budget of a great power. So, the exact amount of money changing hands that results from enforcing war reparations is variable for the reasons you mentioned. God damn, evading the question. So I guess, yeah, no, they're variable, so they won't stay the same. I guess it wasn't really evading the question at all. But how are they variable? What is the variables? How do the variables vary? Please, more information. I need more. Maybe I haven't seen it, but will other nations always intervene when I start a diplomatic play? Me, mighty Württemberg, wants to annex Baden. They're quite open to the idea and would say yes. Could France try and object to this unification? If they have an interest in the region, absolutely. And once Baden sees France support their independence, they may change their mind about conceding to mighty Württemberg's demands. Though they're still permitted to just back down, even if France supports their side, of course. France has no say in that. Okay. No demands to change government types. If I were playing the USA, I couldn't force the Emperor of Mexico to step down. Government type is a function of laws, and both ban slavery and open market are examples of plays which enforce a law on someone else. So an abolish monarchy play would work the same way. We don't have immediate plans to expand the repertoire of laws you can enforce in other countries beyond the 2 we have now, but it's definitely on the roadmap. Another hypothetical enforced communism play suggested in this thread would work the same way. Yeah, so there are, obviously there are ban slavery and open market. We've already seen that in the dev diary above, but things like force better healthcare, while, you know, people, like, that would be nice, you know, to have, especially if you're American, you kind of need it. But, you know, it wouldn't make sense to have as a war goal, right? But abolish the monarchy, or reinstate the monarchy, or spread communism, or spread democracy and give me your oil. And these kind of things definitely, I think, should be in there. Slavery and open market, and I think, like, the method by which you rule, right? It'd be, you know, spread democracy, or, you know, abolish monarchy, or reinstate monarchy. That would be really nice to have. I can't think of any others that I think would be really good. Like, spread my own kind of government. Yeah, that would be nice to have. So puppets and territories can't make independence plays against their overlord. Yes, they can. Don't know where you're getting that from. It's pretty clear in the dev diary. But that's it for the dev responses. I do have, however, some comments to go through. So how about we go through those? To start with, we have this one here. The symbol by the countries seem to be referring to military power, but it seems like a fairly unclear icon. Hope it gets a bit clearer icon later. Yeah, no, that's something I did mention in the dev diary as well, and it was in the Twitter teaser as well. The icon that I'll also put on the screen, probably just like up there, it's not very clear when it's super small. So it is, it would be nice if that was changed for sure. There is no way it's just military power. France having almost double the power of the UK seems really, really wrong. I don't think it is really wrong though, right? If you think about it, East India Company is its own tag. So Britain isn't getting the benefit of a massive amount of Indian soldiers in their armies. They're mostly being a part of the East India Company's armies. So Britain without India having less than half of what France has kind of seems pretty legit, if I'm being honest there. They also go on to say maybe it's something more diplomatic like clout, potentially, but I do think it is definitely I do think it is, you know, military power. There is also the option of it being military power in the region, like Blobman Eat Me says here. Neither Great Britain or France are going to pull their entire military for one colony in West Africa. That's got potential as an idea, but I don't think so. It's going to be full military power. I'm fairly sure of that. But yeah, hopefully the symbols will be changed. Next up, we have this one here. My concern is how history handles this system. It seems there's to have two substantial problems that you can see. What happens in large historical acquisitions of territory if one nation becomes so strong that the other guy concedes? How does the Mexican-American War work if the US is so powerful that the Mexican AI doesn't want to fight? Do they only get one state and a truce if Mexico concedes, or are they going to script certain wars? The latter was a huge problem I had with Vic 2. Its war system wasn't capable of representing historical conquests, at least not without maxing infamy, so it used decisions and events, but that made historical wars capable of large-scale conquest you could never manage to replicate if you went alt history. Yeah, no, definitely this is a concern, right, with diplomatic plays, that you as a player may not accept the enemy backing down. Like, I could see that totally being a thing. If take the example that Shoulders of Giants here has. The Americans have made a diplomatic play to annex parts of Mexico. Their main demand is California. I don't know. Yeah, it's California. Is their main demand. Mexico in game would say, you know, we can't beat them. We can barely control the north part of our country as it is. We can't beat them. We don't have the military for it. The USA is far too powerful. We will back down. We will concede defeat. We'll back down. You can take your primary demand. The USA should turn around and say, no, we're going to war, and I will be taking more. They should be able to say no to the other country backing down. And then, again, moving on, it doesn't really account for wars that spiral out of control. Dev diaries have said that you cannot add war goals after the war starts, but that doesn't really make sense. No one at the start of World War I was planning to dismantle Austria-Hungary, restore Poland, take basically all of the Ottoman Empire, and so on. Those became the end state, because after throwing tens of millions of lives into a meat grinder, the Entente want to take their enemies apart. This system kind of represents gunboat diplomacy, but fails to deal with escalations in response to how a war plays out. Very much agree, and this is primarily where I got my comments from earlier from. Absolutely, wars should be able to escalate, and I think locking that behind the Great War mechanic makes a lot of sense, and I hope maybe we will see that. Next up, I hope you can add war goals during wars if the war can somehow be flagged as Great War. Exactly what I've said. This div diary implies rigid war goals set at the beginning of the war. Meanwhile, the Great War was characterized by a constant switching of war goals. Everybody was asking themselves what the war was really about. And then we've got Firecrack here with, I think what would be cool if a similar system could handle that by re-triggering the diplomatic play after some set time, condition, or damage. It'd be a single maneuver phase that would allow expansion of war goals in other states to join in, but this time all the goals from the previous play would be considered initial, so the state could back down at a much larger cost than what was available previously. Each time this triggers, more goals could be added on top. That's a really cool idea. I'm not sure if it's really feasible or if I would enjoy it, but it's a very cool idea. So hopefully the devs have seen that and maybe given them some ideas to think about, because I do think the expansion of wars, especially during a Great War scenario, is kind of necessary. I know I've said that a bunch of times already, but I do still think that. Sounds very cool. I'm very pumped. I hope there are more options for siding with different nations. Like, instead of just committing to sending in the troops, countries should be able to commit to not interfering in the other direction, or not training with one side, or just contributing guns or money or other things. One of the things that made Bismarck so great wasn't just the allies he called into war, but his ability to make third parties not interfere with Prussia's various wars on its way to unification. Minding their business was enough of a diplomatic coup to be a huge game changer. So it does seem, like, say, Yar says here, it does seem to be here on some level being able to peel off supporters for the other side, if not outright back you. And then participants in a play can declare neutrality to get out of it, but it seems like the promises you make when swaying them only ever take effect if they side with you, so there's no way to negotiate for neutrality. It would be nice if that was a bit more possible, to be able to negotiate for neutrality. Yeah, just... I think once somebody decides to go to war, I don't know, like, let's take Prussia here as the example. Prussia is making a diplomatic play to take Alsace-Lorraine from France, and they don't want Britain getting involved. But the play has started. Alsace-Lorraine is the claim, the primary claim of the war, and Britain joins. France has offered them, I don't know, German East Africa, right? At that point, Britain is involved. He's in. What can you as Prussia then do to make Britain neutral again? I don't know if there is anything. It's certainly not been, or I'm fairly sure it hasn't been told to us. Like, you can offer him parts of France maybe to try and sway him to your side, but can you sway them to neutrality? I don't think you can. So that's a very interesting idea there that has been brought up, and it's something to think about. One thing that seems to be missing is a white peace option, which seems like it'd be quite problematic. I think any conflict, both sides should be able to back off and agree to the status quo rather than having to fight it out. Again, it's something that I said very, very plainly. I think there should be a white peace option before we go to war. There's some back and forth about it. So the goal that's starting to play always comes with a risk of loss, which discourages just playing the odds to see who will support you. Exactly. You shouldn't be discouraging this kind of... discourage using this amazing system, you know? It feels gamey and not particularly organic. I also think it'll lead to a lot of really stupid wars that you wouldn't realistically happen. I've seen action for final judgment on it, but I can't help but feel that this will lead to a lot of stupid offensive wars on a world war scale over random pieces of desert because the defending side decided to make their main demand one of the attacking side's cores. Realistically, there should not be a point where the aggressor can look at the scale of the whole conflict is escalating to, decide it's really not worth the cost it would inflict, and call the whole thing off at the cost of losing a little bit of face internationally, which would then put the ball in the defender's court to see if they would want to keep pursuing it, making them the new aggressor with all the new political dynamics that might involve. So the reason I included that comment there from iTomes is literally because of the idea of changing who the aggressor is. If France starts a diplomatic play against Belgium and then decides, nah, you know what, Belgium's now got the UK on side, it's got Prussia on side, it's not going to go my way, I'm going to back down from this. And that backing down, if Belgium has demanded like Picardy or something like that, France backing down shouldn't just give them Picardy, right? Belgium should be able to say, yeah, I agree, well, let's just go back to how it was, status quo, white peace, all that kind of good stuff. Or it should be able to say, no, actually, you know what, I do want Picardy, and now I've got the big boys on side, I want it. And in that case, yeah, I'd say that Belgium should be the aggressor in that situation. But yeah, that's why I included that. That seems a decent idea, I think. This one here, very good dev diary using the crisis system for really every conflict was a great idea. That said, I don't know if I like the idea that you can't join ongoing plays once they resulted in war. There's another feature I think needs to be expanded upon so that you can have a World War I situation where Mexico and the USA are being courted in an ongoing war to expand it. Maybe limit how easy it is to do until the later texts, so not everything results in an ever-increasing world war. So this is, again, something I mentioned a little earlier, and that is that countries should be able to be joining wars later on. And I think the best way that this could be done without kind of messing up the balance of the game is have it limited to Great Wars. So in Victoria 2, I think it's in 1890. It's either 1880 or 1890. Great Wars are unlocked. So any war between, I think it's 2 great powers on each side, is a Great War. And Great Wars always come with Great War capitulation, war goal, which is kind of painful. You should dismantle your army and all this kind of good stuff. But I think Great Wars should be able to be expanded. Such that, yeah, a Great War, England-France versus Germany, Austria-Hungary, both sides should try and court other great powers to their side. And I think that should totally be possible because it's kind of historically the reality of our world. The USA joined both world wars late, after being courted by the Allies / Entente. And then I kind of think should be possible in Vicky 3 as well. But maybe just limit it to Great War Plus, you know? Anyway, next one. This one I found on Reddit. Please don't say Diplo plays work like this, right? It's kind of a scenario that this person has come up with that I also think is a little bit not worrying. I'm not worried, but I don't want them to work like this, you know? It's if we can have this scenario, I would be a little bit shocked, right? So Austria has started a diplomatic play against Krakow. We're going to annex you. Krakow brings in France and Russia to back them up. Austria is then, oh, well, maybe we should back down. And then Krakow now demands Bohemia as their main demand. Austria then backs down, and Krakow just got Bohemia for free. That's a situation I don't think should be ever the case. Because I can actually see that in multiplayer, right? If Austria wants to expand at all, but Austrian player, right? But the Austrian player is obviously big rivals with the French player, and the Russian player, and the Ottoman player. So every time the Austria-Hungary player wants to go to war with a smaller nation, said smaller nation is able to call in the big boys, because the big boys have all set that area as a point of interest. You know, they've got a strategic interest in that area. And they could just cock-block Austria forever. And I don't think that should be possible. I think that would very much suck for the Austria player, for one. But then it would be very ahistorical and very unauthentic if every time the Austrian tried to do anything, they either, like, went to war or lost land. It's a bit awkward, you know? So yeah, hopefully the Diplo plays won't work like that. We'll see. We'll see at the different foibles. We don't know how the AI really handles these things just yet. And then we obviously have the comment at the end of the Dev Diary saying that the next Dev Diary, next Thursday, we're going to be talking about war. And I just wanted to bring up these two comments simultaneously. Let's go! But I hope they don't turn this into Hearts of Iron 4. And on the other hand, I hope for something similar to Hearts of Iron 4. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? Because I think fundamentally Victoria 2's combat is not bad. I quite like it. I think the combat itself is very good. It very handily shows the progression between the start of the era and the end of the era, going through machine guns and then into more of a static warfare. I think Victoria 2 does that brilliantly. The only parts that Victoria 2 does poorly is the lack of an army builder, a macro builder, makes making your armies an absolute royal pain in the arse. The lack of hotkeys as well, the lack of... It's mostly UI issues, right? And I think a lot of people say that Victoria 2's combat is bad because of those factors. Not because the combat is actually bad, because it kind of isn't. So I kind of hope that the combat is somewhat similar, just with an upgrade, a facelift with all of the modern tools that other Paradox games have had. But on the other hand, there is it could be a little bit more hands-off, and we could have a frontline system a la Hoi 4. That's also an option I'm not wholly against, right? I don't really like Hearts of Iron 4, but I can see the benefit of a frontline system. Not one that has you set up your offensive and then you click a button and the AI will do your offensive for you. No, I don't want to see that, but I would not mind seeing, you select the army that you've got. Maybe your army is always stationed at a various place, right? This is the army of Berlin. It's always stationed in Berlin. So you can select the army of Berlin and then draw a line on the map. This is the front line. This is the region. This is the area. This is the border that you will garrison and you will fight on if it breaks out war between, yourself and Russia. This wouldn't allow you to then draw a fucking arrow going all the way to Moscow and then clicking a button and they would attack there, right? I don't want to see that, but I definitely would not be unhappy with seeing that kind of border / garrison / frontline system, right? I would not mind that at all. I think that would be pretty cool. But yeah, that's one option. The other option, I guess, is the crackpot theory, which I kind of already touched on. I don't want to see it. I don't think we will see it. I don't think the linchpin of that theory was the strategic region seen in one of the earlier screenshots, and we already know now what a strategic region is, so I don't think the crackpot theory holds any more water. I think it's all drained out, so that's quite good. But you never know. There could be a wrench or there could be a spanner thrown in, and it could be something completely new that none of us have thought of. And you know what? I'm here for that too. I am very excited for next week's Dev Diary, and I, of course, will be covering it. There will be a video as soon as the Dev Diary is released, so I hope to see you in the comment section of that video. But if you like this one, like button, make a comment, and what's the other YouTube stuff? ding a bell or subscribe or something. I don't fucking know. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next Thursday. Or earlier than that, if you like my other videos, too. Yeah. Bye.